All right, so time to dial up one Mr. Steve Vai and get him on the phone here. Woo, that is nice and loud. Make sure I've got his right number. Don't listen to any of these numbers and try to call him back because that would totally be not appropriate, all right? So you don't know what numbers they are. Just know that. All right, here we go.
Hello?
Is this Steve Vai?
This is Steve Vai.
Steve, it's Ethan. How you doing, my friend?
Very good. How you doing, Ethan?
I am fantastic. Excited for your show coming up on Monday with Mr. Satriani. You guys go way, way back, don't you?
Yeah, we go way back. I first met Joe when I was 12 years old.
He was like your first official guitar teacher, wasn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. Joe was, we lived in a little town on Long Island, and it was, they had like the generations of bands. The guys in 10th grade had a band, the guys in 7th grade had a band, and Joe was one of the older guys in like the 10th grade band, but he was fantastic. He was an incredible player even in 10th grade, and we all many of us were taking lessons from him, and I just lucked out. I got in there early. I went to his house and knocked on the door with a guitar and a pack of strings when I was 12.
I mean, that's amazing. And to think that, the man who is now known as Satriani was your teacher. And of course, obviously now you're Steve Vai. That's just a crazy, crazy way you both came up like that.
It's just crazy. I mean, we both marvel at it because, I took lessons like for 5 years on and off. And then all through the years, we were just, best buddies. And would always share music, and we had many opportunities to tour together and with G3, and we've done so many, jump up and jams, and we've recorded G3 records, and also appear on a lot of as guest soloists on various records. But this is the first time that Joe and I are actually doing something exclusively as a duo. And we started this off just something like, let's just go out and tour together, and do a nice big American tour. And that turned into, let's write some new music for it. So we kind of thought we'd come up with like 3 songs or so that we can have. And, that started turning out so great. We're like, hey, let's make a whole record. So, that's what we're doing now. We're it's so much fun, because I feel like I have a real partner in a way, because all through my whole career, my music was always precious to me, and I always kind of, and most artists do that, you have a vision and you manifest it and you go out and you tour. But this is so different because I've never really co-created, like got in deep with another guitar player like this, somebody with such an incredible sense of musicality and physical technique. It's just, Joe's remarkable.
Would you say that you still think he's a little better than you, or have you surpassed him guitar-wise yet?
Well, I'm not the one to answer that, but better is such a loose term,
Right.
There's favorites. Joe's always been solid. That's one of the remarkable things about him as a player that far surpasses me is just his bulletproof kind of nature when he gets on that stage and he's playing his parts and he's playing his music. It's like his intonation is perfect. He hardly ever makes mistakes, and it's just really solid. And, I get up there. I'm more of a, visceral kind of a attack, crazy, it's like I'm sitting on a branch sawing it off going, hey, look at me, I'm still holding on.
See how long you can go before it all comes falling down.
Yeah, somehow we make it work beautifully together. Last night was the first show we did together, and we played our track Sea of Emotion for the first time, and it was just glorious. I mean, there's one. It's one thing to jam back and forth and trade, but it's another thing to like play these beautiful melodies and harmony and these really heavy parts. It's just fantastic.
So is that how this tour differs from the G3? Because G3, each of you, and including Eric Johnson, would get up and you do your own stuff, and then at the end, you'd all three come out and jam on some community songs. But you and Joe have written stuff together. So are you each doing individual, each of your songs, or are you out on stage the whole time together?
Yeah, this phase of the experiment started out as Steve and Joe going out with their separate bands, sort of like G2.
Gotcha.
So it's kind of like G3. And then we get together at the end and we jam some songs. But the difference is when we get together at the end and jam, and we're playing one of our originals. But as things unfold, it's, we have to see what the future holds. But, we're hopeful that, if everybody's schedules and all things come together, that we will be able to release a record where we actually go out as a band, just, one band. But these are all right now, chatting points.
It seems like maybe by the end of this tour, it could have gone from you each doing individual things to where 50% of the show is both you out there with the new music you've written while on the tour.
Well, don't say that too loud because it's really difficult, and I have to go and learn it right now. But you might be onto something there.
There you go.
Because it's a long tour. It's like 7 weeks, and getting ready for a tour, especially this tour, there was no time to kind of set something like that up. But now that we're out, who knows? Maybe we'd love to do the other two parts of the Sea of Emotion.
Well, and, Joe obviously is super busy because he's also gearing up for the Best of All Worlds where he's playing all of Eddie's parts with Sammy, and that tour is kicking off like right after yours. So he's got to be a little wired in the brain right now.
Yep. When it rains, it pours, brother.
Yeah, so you'll have to have him call me when he's coming back through with Sammy, and we'll get him on the phone then. But obviously right now we're talking about you, and I wanted to go back to the beginning of your career because you started getting into music, from what I understand, around the age of 6. And by then, Frank Zappa had already been making music, and yet he ended up being your first paying musical job, right?
Yeah, it was kind of remarkable. I mean, like many people that end up being musicians, you discover music at an early age, and you kind of wake up and you go, that's it. That's what I want. It makes sense to me. And I just loved it. And when you're that age, you're completely innocent, totally naive. And I just thought, this is what I like and this is what I'm doing. And I just stuck with it and, started playing when I was about 12. And the remarkable thing is that I really hunkered down, I would practice tremendous hours, and I loved it all through high school and college. And while I was in college at Berklee College of Music, when I was 18, I contacted Zappa, and he wanted to try me out for the band because he had heard a tape. But when he found out I was 18, it was like, no, I can't have an 18-year-old in the band. So he hired me to transcribe music. So for 2 years, I transcribed the music.
And that had to be hard as hell because this is Zappa.
Yeah, it was. It's probably the hardest, but for some crazy reason, I was just really into it, and I just was fascinated, and I just wanted to really do it, and I loved doing it. And then when I was 20, right after I turned 20, the next day I moved to California, and next thing you know, I found myself in Frank's rehearsals. So it was kind of like right out of high school almost, it felt like. And I was there on the stage with Frank. It's crazy.
And it seems like from an early age for you, music and things like the circle of fifths and theory and triads and inverted chords, because I do a little music on the side myself, but there's still some things where I'm just like, I don't get it yet. But that's one of those things that really made sense to you early on, isn't it?
Yeah, few things made sense to me. But that just was very, but for some reason, really, no, I was not an extraordinary child, or I wasn't above average at all. I was completely if anything, a little bit of a dunce. But music was clear, and all those things. I wanted to be a composer, and I wanted to know the language of music, and it came easy. And I studied it all through high school intensely, like, composing. I started composing in high school, and it was just something I loved doing, and I wanted to know. But it's not actually necessary to understand music theory in great depth to be an effective musician. You have to have a good inner ear and a good imagination. That's really the food for your creations, your imagination, how you're hearing it in your head. And it does help to at least know the basics. And it sounds like you got the basics down. But to go deeper, you have to want to.
Yeah, I'm better playing by ear necessarily than, picking up some tab or running off of sheet music. I can sit down and pluck away until I hear it, and it feels better to just play what I know in my head necessarily than to read the actual music for it, for me personally.
Yeah, many people do it that way. I mean, Jeff Beck did it that way.
Yeah. I do got to say one thing. I would never call anybody a dunce who's one of their first songs they ever wrote was the Attitude song that's in 7/16 time. I mean, come on.
Well, it's actually polymetric. It's 7/16 over 4/4.
Yeah, I was listening to it the other day, and I was like, okay, I can't even pick up this beat. Oh, wait, I got that beat. Oh, crap, now I lost it again.
Yeah, that's what happens when you're a bit nerdy. I love getting into all that kind of crazy stuff. But at the end of the day, it has to sound like music,
Exactly. I mean, there's got to be some soul, and there's got to be a groove in there. Anybody can get up and just kind of like wheedly-wee all over the place, but it takes, talent and true soul to write a piece of music, really.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it takes a desire and a fearless kind of a attitude that I'm just going to do this. I'm allowed to. Nobody's judging me. I don't care. I'm going to play, and I'm going to play this music that's in my head and let the chips fall as they will.
I think you've had one of the few careers where, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, it seems like you've almost always had that artistic freedom because, you start with Zappa, who is nothing but all artistic freedom. And then you did some solo stuff where you were in control. And then even when you played with David Lee Roth and Billy Sheehan, it was everybody can bring ideas in. So it doesn't seem like you've ever been constrained too much, and you've always been able to just do your thing. Yeah,
everybody has artistic freedom if they choose it. But all of the various situations that I was in, unless it was my own personal music, which is the vast majority of what I've done in my career, there's parameters that you have to stick within, but within those parameters, there is artistic freedom. With Frank, it was a little different because he was in control of every note.
Right,
and that was fine with me because I loved the music he wrote. But then when I was in like Dave Roth, there was parameters. That you're not going to play a Zappa song. This is rock and roll, and within those parameters, I was free to do whatever I wanted. But there were parameters, and with Whitesnake, same thing. So when you get into a situation, you got to look around and see what's expected of you, and how can you contribute in a powerful way within your own comfort level.
Let's get into the time with David Lee Roth, specifically Yankee Rose. When you were making your guitar talk on that, are those each like tiny little bends every time you hit those different notes? The that kind of thing? Because I've watched it and I still can't figure out exactly how you do that. It's just an amazing thing.
You want me to give away all my magician tricks?
Just the ones that nobody else will ever learn,
Well, that was kind of like a combination of holding the whammy bar down and then bending notes and using the wah-wah to phrase it so it sounds like a human voice. So you got to use your whammy bar.
So you got three sides on this. You got the wah, you got the whammy, and you got the bends. And okay, yeah. So
but you have to have a little bit of the sense of absurdity in you, too.
Well, speaking of absurd, I was wondering, did you and Dave have a competition over who could wear the tightest and sparkliest stage outfits?
He won.
Dave would always win that one for sure.
Yeah, I would always win because he could put real rhinestones on his pants.
Yeah, you would scratch your guitars or your hands or anything.
Yeah. Well, back in those days, the 80s, it was quite fun, because you could do all that crazy stuff. You could wear the most ridiculous clothes and do crazy things with your hair and run around the stage like a lunatic. It was just great.
Let's talk about Crossroads real quick, because I got to be perfectly honest. You blew Ralph Macchio out of the water in the guitar scene. He was using a slide, and you were just using your fingers. So he was, even though he wasn't really playing, he was cheating, and you were way better. I just got to say that.
Oh, well, thank you. I actually played all of his parts. I recorded all of his parts, except the slide. That was Ry Cooder. I don't play slide, but... So I actually beat myself.
And then you had to stand there during the filming and watch him pretend to play what you played, beating yourself. That had to be kind of rough.
That's right. That's right.
You were cool enough when you teamed up with Ibanez that you guys developed a 7-string, which a lot of metal bands are using now with that low B string. Was the Ibanez Universe the first 7-string that was really sort of a commercial availability to other musicians?
From what I understand and what I'm told, yes. It was the first production model, widespread production model 7-string rock guitar. I mean, 7 strings, there are people who've played them, but they were more custom made, and they were way back in, like George Van Epps and Uli Roth was the only real rock guitar player that I know of that had a 7-string. But I just thought it would be a cool idea, because I knew what you could do with that string. And I knew that what I was going to do with it was probably going to be very different than what the next generation was going to do. I had a sneaking suspicion that when these young kids get a hold of that low note, they're going to start creating stuff that's just a whole new dimension of metal, and they certainly did.
They have definitely run with that, and it's worked out well for a lot of bands. And I think only somebody like you would look at a guitar with 6 strings and, up to 20, sometimes 24 frets and go, too easy. Let's put another string on there.
Well, at the time, you start reaching for stuff, and if you're lucky enough, like me, to have a company like Ibanez that will support all your crazy ideas, you can end up getting something like the Hydra.
I was just about to ask you about the Hydra, because obviously 7 strings wasn't enough. And for those people that don't know what the Hydra is, I've seen you play it. What the hell is the Hydra?
It's a good idea gone crazy. That's what it is. Well, I've always loved multi-neck guitars, because Jimmy Page is my guy, you know. And all through the years, I've had all sorts of multi-necked instruments made, but I never really felt like I made the one that could carry a whole piece of music. So about 7 or 8 years ago, it just came to me. I want a guitar that has a bass, a 7-string, 12-string, harp strings, sample and hold, sustainers, all sorts, piezo's, a synthesizer, a guitar synthesizer. And the Hydra is a highly technical, complex beast, and it needs to look like something a dragon threw up.
It definitely does. You won on that one for sure.
Yeah. So I started to write a song, and my idea, the vision was to create a first and foremost, a decent piece of music that's listenable and enjoyable with a great melody. But I had to do that while playing all the other necks.
How the hell do you do that? You only have 2 hands.
Well, you do it the same way anybody accomplishes anything. You have to visualize it. And you can only really visualize things that are within your wheelhouse. See, I would never be able to visualize probably a lot of the things that you do, creative things that you do or anybody else does, that's in their wheelhouse. So when I go into that visualization, it has to do with guitars and music and extra necks, and I could see myself playing it, and that's where you got to go. You got to be able to see it in your mind. And once you do that, it has to start manifesting. And that's how it...
That triple neck heart guitar that you had during the David Lee Roth era wasn't enough because you were playing both necks with a right and a left hand, and now you have the Hydra, which is... I'm surprised you're not playing with your feet right now.
Well, you know, the big heart guitar in the Dave Roth videos, that I originally made that as a prop for the video because it's so ridiculous. You know, it's just a giant red heart with 3 necks sticking out of it. And I could play, you know, the left and the right necks a little bit, but I wasn't proficient at it. That's like a real mind bender. There is a guy, Michelangelo Badio, who's a real intense shredder, and he plays like a guitar with 4 necks, and he can do that left-right brain thing. I was using it more as a prop, and it kind of bugged me that I didn't do anything real quality with it. So when I recorded my record, The Ultrazone, I wrote a song called Fever Dream, and I used the big red heart guitar, and I did use all the necks in a meaningful way. But still, it wasn't the Hydra, you know. It couldn't carry a piece of music, you know. So I had to do the Hydra.
Well, more power to you, my friend. I'm glad that you are still out there pushing the boundaries. And thank you so much for taking the time to call in today. Steve Vai, just one of the greatest guitarists alive. It's been an honor and a great time, my friend.
Well, thank you so much. And we're really looking forward to the show coming up. And it's really special. And, you know, it's a good time. So come on down.